Something flew under the radar. Something happened a few years ago that no one noticed and nobody seems to want to talk about it. You can search high and low, you can't find anyone anywhere who covered it. In March of 2014, Mojang partnered with a small game development studio owned by Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak to develop a port of their popular game Minecraft. Now, by mid-2014, Minecraft ports were hotter than ever. Every platform was being given a Minecraft port. After PC and mobile, Minecraft saw its way onto the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii U dev kits, the iPad XL, and even Samsung's new line of executive desktop tablet hybrids. But fans of the franchise knew something was missing, and it wasn't so much if they were going to get it, but rather when. It would only be a matter of time before Mojang would find the right people for the job, but time was ticking, and fans were getting impatient. So where do we go from here? Well, let's take a step back. It all started in November of 2012 when AT&T CEO Randall L. Stevenson first met Minecraft creator and LGBTQ ally Marcus Notch Persson at an E3 press event. The two bumped into each other coincidentally at a Terraria booth, where they bonded over scotch and spoke of the current state of the industry, expressing thoughts on hardware sales of the previous quarter. The two hit it off, and while parting ways to fulfill other business relations during the expo, exchanged phone numbers and kept in contact. Within a week of their meeting, Notch and Randall began discussing the possibility of Minecraft being brought to AT&T's platform. Certainly a proposition as such would be beneficial to both parties. Both the American Telephone and Telegraph Company and Mojang possessed massive user bases, and combining the two would result in nothing but colossal profit. It all seemed like a no-brainer, but who would develop it? Mojang couldn't develop it. They were too busy putting all their resources into what is now known as one of the greatest financial success stories in all of gaming, leading to the eventual bankruptcy of only one major studio. And 4J Studios had their hands full with bug fixes for one game that already existed 3 years beforehand. It would be difficult to find another developer to trust with a property as massive as Minecraft. So Mojang just put the partnership with AT&T on the back burner. Well, that was until June of 2013. Let me introduce you to a little man named Steve the Wozniak. Steve Wozniak is best known for his exemplary work on the Challenger space shuttle, along with other great credits such as the development of the Atari 7800, the standardization of the Universal Internet Protocol, the creation of the metric system, his lead role in the United Nations Security Council's voting system, and the water physics in Mario Party 4. But in 2009, Steve founded the small software development studio Computational-Oriented Cognitive Knowledge, or Fork for short. Steve and his company had just launched the Sony Trinitron KV27FS100 to moderate success, but now they were ready for a challenge. You see, Steve and Notch had met in Milwaukee, Wisconsin years beforehand, where they bumped into each other at a local bar. The two became quick friends, bonding over their love for game development and carpentry. And now, in 2012, Steve was looking to rekindle old friendships. He reached out to his now successful pal Notch, and little did he know, he had reached out at the perfect time. You see, after struggling with game development for a long time, Notch realized that Minecraft wasn't something you could just program on some computer. It was something that came from the heart. And after seeing his old buddy reach out to him, he knew the right man for the job. On June 5, 2013, Steve Wozniak agreed that he and his company Fork would begin developing a new version of Minecraft. And after long and tedious planning, it was official. Minecraft would finally be making its way onto AT&T routers. So without wasting any more time, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of Minecraft AT&T Router Edition's unorthodox development and unfortunate fate. Development started on a cold winter's night in July of 2013. Steve and his team of 9 got to work programming. Now, if you're familiar with AT&T routers, you'll know they're notoriously difficult to develop for. The 2007 classic NHL 98 famously flopped on the platform and caused developer John Lennon Games to liquidate most of its assets. So a successful launch of the most popular game in the world would be no easy feat. Lucky for Steve, he had a 2 of spades in his back pocket. Community-leading AT&T firmware modder Kevin Patrick Curran. Together, they were able to get Minecraft Pocket Edition running on the AT&T Pace 5168NV. Things were looking up. Development was continuing smoothly while Mojang was able to keep their focus on their growing Etsy business. But there was a problem. Something major was about to change. By May of 2014, the game was on track to be released before the end of the year, but development was halted abruptly, and that was all due to one surprise factor. Mojang was being bought by well-known spyware developer Microsoft. This transition cut a lot of ties for Mojang, and it looked as though Steve and his studio were bound to cease their partnership. At this point, Steve was unable to let go of his work. Notch and Randall had both been frustrated with Steve for a while, as development had been taking much longer than expected, and much to the chagrin of both Mojang and AT&T, router sales were down, leading to a lack of interest in the product anyway. But determined, Steve pushed through, hoping for a November launch date. By September, Microsoft had announced they would be finalizing their purchase of Mojang on November 6th, meaning that Steve was almost out of time. But after non-stop crunching, Steve and his company Fork finally released Minecraft AT&T Router Edition on November 5th, 2014. Yes, it was finally here, and the next day, Microsoft completed their purchase of Mojang and it was wiped from the AT&T App Store. That was it. Yep, after all that work, Steve's hard work had been erased from history. Well, not exactly. You see, Fork developed 4 different versions, and you may be saying to yourself, well, these versions aren't lost. You can find ISOs of Aris NVG589 edition, Motorola NVG510 edition, and 2-wire 3801 edition on every other Tom, Dick, and Mary ROM site, and while you're right about that, one of them wasn't grabbed. One of these versions was never preserved, and Steve and his company, to this day, have never been able to salvage an archive of this version or any of its builds, and that is none other than Minecraft Pace 4111N edition, Minecraft's most obscure AT&T router edition. And while it's been lost to time, footage of it still exists, so let's give it a look. But first, a word from this video's sponsor, BillVPN. BillVPN is your go-to VPN for downloading torrents and emailing zip bombs to your neighbors. Thanks to BillVPN's lightning-fast encryption, government spyware is kept away from your private data, such as your home address and favorite senators. BillVPN is the perfect gift to give your loved ones this most recent Christmas, especially for those of us with big city aspirations. As a famous YouTuber, I often find myself with my hands full. Creating mediocre videos every other month takes its toll, but thanks to BillVPN, that no longer happens. Using my discount code BEARMAN36000 because it had to be 12 characters long, you can get 15% off your first year of BillVPN. For more information, click the link in the description or call the number on screen. Thank you, BillVPN, for sponsoring this video. Now, back to Minecraft. Let's look through some leaked pre-release footage of the game. It's believed most of this footage was captured 3 months before the game's release. The first thing you'll notice about this version is that it's in a 4:3 aspect ratio. In fact, in this footage, the game is being played on a CRT. This is actually because the devs used a video cable that was plugged into both the device the software was being played on and a CRT television set. The setting in which this footage is recorded is unclear, but shockingly, there seems to be a gun and a Jersey Mike's gift card on the desk of this employee. The footage was shot in 144p, but we can still make out some very interesting details. To start, there seems to be a touch interface akin to early versions of Minecraft Pocket Edition. This is actually because most of these pre-release versions were built with the upcoming AT&T Aruba portable video game router in mind, which was famously cancelled after head of marketing at the time, Paul Schaefer, was caught on tape by TMZ stating that the Israel-Palestine conflict was, quote, super gay and probably plotted by the homos. As you can imagine, it caused quite the PR stir. The AT&T Aruba would have acted as a portable Pace 4111N and could play the entire Pace 4111N library, but since it was cancelled, the Pace 4111N game library remains playable only on authentic commercially released routers. So because of the movement and UI, most assume that the gameplay in this leaked recording is being displayed to a TV using a modified Aruba dev kit with a capture card installed for internal recordings. The gameplay generally seems to be heavily based off of Minecraft Pocket Edition Lite for iOS, more specifically with a resolution designed for early model iPads. Strangely, a few minutes into the video after the room lights are turned off, presumably for a better, more vibrant recording, the dev tester appears to grab the gun and remove it from the table. If we freeze the frame and adjust the contrast, we can make out what appears to be a 9mm Glock 45. It comes off as bizarre, but to make things even stranger, a few minutes later, the person appears loading a magazine into the handgun. It begs the question, if the gameplay is still going on while the person is loading the gun, does that mean that there are 2 people in the room recording the footage? And if there is, why is one of them loading a gun? It seems clear that this version is merely a demo and not a completed build or anything close to one, since the inventory is extremely limited. It's unclear if this was ever meant to be some kind of kiosk demo or if it was always meant to be used exclusively internally. After a few minutes of building, the office lights suddenly are turned back on despite a duller image for the recording device, the nature of which is unknown. Then, strangely enough, the second person in the room appears to place a Goomba amiibo of all things on the desk in front of the CRT. It's removed, but after a bit of more gameplay, it becomes clear that a lot of the building seems to be optimized for touchscreen, strengthening the assumption that this game was developed with the Aruba in mind. You can see the user tapping at the space in front of a block to place more since they can't crouch and lean in front of it. Suddenly, you can hear the second person in the room playing what sounds to be Luigi's mansion in the background. Then, shortly thereafter, someone places what appears to be an opened bottle of Zachariah Harris premium eggnog next to the television. It's at this point it becomes apparent why Mojang insisted this pre-release footage stay classified. The user playing seems to make an off-color joke, poking fun at people who eat at Cracker Barrel. But if that isn't strange enough, after a few more minutes of gameplay, the developer makes a glass pull before jumping off and killing themselves. Then the footage abruptly ends and the user then seems to pick up the camera and starts recording the screen of a separate device which seems to be playing a VHS tape of Howard Stern's Butt Bongo Fiesta. It makes you wonder what on earth was going on inside this room during this playtesting. The video then ends with a vulgar sticky note. It's believed that this was an inside joke among the devs, but we'll never know for sure. Compare this to the other AT&T router editions and the difference is night and day. By running an NVG510 emulator on a Pace 4111N, we can check out Minecraft Motorola NVG510 edition. Now, if you've never used a Pace 4111N router before, you may be a little confused at first. You'll notice the lack of video output ports on the back, but veteran AT&T router users will know that to use this thing, you'll need one of these Ethernet to HDMI adapters. Simply connect the Ethernet cable to the adapter and bam, now you're ready. Well, almost. You see, emulation on AT&T routers is a bit tricky thanks to AT&T's strict anti-piracy measures, but we can bypass it simply by booting up the game using a legitimate copy of the software, even though it's not being loaded on the developer-intended hardware. All you'll need is a copy of Minecraft Motorola NVG 510 edition on a 3.5-inch floppy, a floppy disk USB reader, and since the PACE 4111N's Ethernet ports can't be used to read external drives, a DSL broadband to USB conversion cable and a USB-A female-to-female adapter. Once you grab these, just like that, you're all set and ready to boot up Minecraft. So the first thing you'll notice is the poor image quality. Despite AT&T leading the industry in gaming hardware at the time, being the first company ever in history to use DDR3 RAM for anything, they were pretty behind the times in terms of graphical output. While Microsoft and Sony had been presenting their games in 1080p for years by this point, AT&T was still stuck in the past, rendering visuals at 480p despite literally utilizing an HDMI port to display video. But as most people who would rather defend faceless corporations instead of demanding better quality products for their money from the companies selling them those products in exchange for that money will tell you, graphics don't matter. One of the first things you'll notice aside from the resolution is the new Super Mario Bros. Wii demo button on the title screen, which would actually let you play the first few levels of World 1 until you defeat the first mid-boss. This was actually only included on kiosk demos and pre-release copies sent to journalists. This game really does hold up if you can get your hands on it. As long as you have a beating heart and at least one working eye, you can have a grand old time playing NVG 510 edition. Of the 4 AT&T router releases, NVG 510 edition saw the highest sales, seeing a whopping 9 sales in its first 17 hours. As for PACE 4111N edition, well, we don't really know. I've tried reaching out to Mojang on this matter, but they seem to be unwilling to share this information. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know. Industry analysts at Kotaku have estimated that the release garnered anywhere from 4 to 12 sales during its lifetime, but again, that's all just hearsay, so take it with a grain of salt. Although this all comes off as a rather inspiring tale of a small game studio's persistence and ambition in building something great, it would be an inaccurate portrayal of history to leave out the dark and sad downfall of Fork and AT&T's gaming division. Let's rewind for a moment. Just a day after Minecraft's quadruple launch on AT&T's various platforms, all 4 games were wiped from the AT&T App Store, and Mojang removed all mentions of the games from their official Minecraft website. Rather than cutting ties entirely with Fork, Microsoft ordered Mojang to find a new coordinator to work with Fork to shift development efforts towards smaller mobile ports instead of unique untouched platforms. And who else did Mojang hire to set things straight than struggling alcoholic heroin addict Artie Lang? After relapsing, Artie Lang was fired from the Howard Stern Show because of an on-air outburst in which he threw coffee at his PA, then almost crushed several staff members to death. What most don't know, however, is that while recovering in rehab, Artie learned to program in C++ and even developed several small indie titles to moderate success. Most of this flew under the radar of his fans because he released them all under the pen name ETM Bedfucker. You see, Artie continued struggling with his addiction throughout the early 2010s, and after being released from jail in 2013 for beating a hooker to death, his childhood buddy Jeanette McCurdy met with him to try to get him back on the right track. Luckily, she had just recently met Notch at a gay dive bar in Germany and gave him his contact. And by complete coincidence, Artie decided to give Notch a ring the exact same day him and Randall were set to meet regarding the future of Fork's partnership with Mojang. After a long phone call, Artie agreed to fly to Bermuda to meet with the two and discuss business further. Here was the thing. Steve was not happy. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with this. He felt betrayed and insulted by Mojang and their actions and wanted no further part in developing games for their IPs. So, now what? Well, Notch gave Steve an ultimatum. Either he welcomes Artie to the development team and begins developing a port of Minecraft to the Nokia Lumia 1020 Windows Phone, or Notch would drop Fork as a development partner and fund Artie in creating a new subsidiary. And, well, you know what happened. Steve said no, and that was it. Fork was no longer working with Mojang, and Notch funded Artie Lang's new game development studio, Bleach and Stab Woundsoft. This new subsidiary began development the same day Steve denounced Mojang, but not too long after development began, it became clear to Notch that he had made a massive mistake. Much of the funding actually came from AT&T. Why would AT&T fund the development of a game for a different company's platform? Well, simple. Since AT&T and Microsoft were working so closely together, they had access to special tools and software used to develop games for Windows phones. This meant that their upcoming ZS60 line of routers could simply just emulate Windows Phone 8.1 natively, granting it access to its entire library of games, ergo Minecraft. But there was an issue they were completely ignoring. You see, Artie had been on Subutex for several months following his murder of a hooker, but he had run out just days after development started and never bothered to get a refill, leading to erratic behavior and, of course, ultimately, a relapse. Artie became violent at work, calling women sluts and his own accountant a, quote, big stupid Jew. It was clear that the project wouldn't work, and it was set in stone on November 35th, 2014, when Artie came into work wielding a machete, killing 8 of his coworkers, including mother of 4, Jared Knobbenbar. Police arrived on scene and detained Artie, saving dozens of lives. If not for the brave efforts of the Glendale Police Department, it's likely that more lives would have been lost. It goes without saying, Mojang and Microsoft have since cut ties with Artie and his company, removing any proof of their collaboration from all their websites and corporate campuses. But that's not where the story ends. AT&T did something so deplorable it essentially killed their console business within less than 2 hours. In the day following this tragedy, AT&T began running completely insensitive and morbid ads referencing Artie Lang's gruesome murders in an attempt to move more product. This was all the idea of well-known suicide bomber Stampy Longnose, who was, at the time, head of game software and hardware development at AT&T. The ad campaign was so sickening and inconsiderate, not to mention over-budgeted, that it essentially killed AT&T's gaming division within hours of its release. The company quickly fired Stampy and shut down their gaming sector less than a week later. After all Steve had done, in the end, it turned out that AT&T, Mojang, and Microsoft probably would have been better off had they just listened to him. But now, blood was indirectly on their hands. And unfortunately for the families of victims, Microsoft and their massive wealth and power quickly hushed outlets and publications, making the whole tragedy seem like nothing more than a dream. To this day, many of the victims have yet to see compensation from their dead loved ones' insurance companies. In the end, Minecraft Pace 4111 Edition holds a unique spot in the history of gaming. Both Steve and Notch refused to acknowledge its existence. In an interview with Wozniak in 2021 regarding his past game development struggles, when asked about 4111 Edition, Steve said, "Can you get a male intern to put his hand on my thigh? I would fucking explode if you got a male intern to put his hand on my thigh." In other words, it's likely that what we know now is all we'll ever know about this version. AT&T routers as a platform are much less prominent today than they were 10 years ago, but they still have a strong but active user base. During this period of time, veteran Minecraft director Jeb expressed strong support of Steve and his actions, but unfortunately had no say in the outcome, since he had been on maternity leave after getting knocked up in a small brothel just outside Seattle during the whole project. Some believe AT&T could have taken over the industry with a bit more time and planning, but as history shows, Lady Luck was not on their side. To this day, fans and influencers continue to defend and praise AT&T and their actions, despite the only thing being required to fully comprehend how terrible of a company they became is a double-digit IQ. Maybe in another life, in another timeline, we'd all be playing Minecraft right now on our fiber gateway BGW62700s, but since AT&T has discontinued their line of gaming routers, this is a future we'll probably never see. If you have Minecraft Pace 4111 N Edition, please help preserve it. Don't let this version die like Mojang wants it to. Remember the efforts of Steve and his team and the brave things he did just to give fans a new way to play their favorite game. None of us would be here right now if it wasn't for Steve, and for that, I think we owe this man a thanks. If you're watching this video, send a thanks to Steve on Twitter. Whether you're watching this video an hour after it comes out or 10 years from now, reach out to Steve on Twitter and thank him for his work. I think it would truly make his day to see fans so dedicated to his incredible work. So if you have the time, let him know you're grateful. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Bearman, and I've been wasting your time. Thanks for watching.